What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 10 of Nintendo Noise, Flip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friends, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello.
The Mayor of Haken, Mr. Chuy Huerta.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And joining us for the first time on this show, a very special guest, friend of the show, master of Metroid, Mr. Max Wright. Max, it's good to catch up with you, man. It's been way too long. How you doing, bud?
I'm fantastic. It's good to be on this.
I bet you're doing fantastic. We got a new Metroid game, right? This is years.
This is a very special day. This is yeah. Imagine if I could feel anything other than joy right now.
I'd be worried for you, frankly.
I've been trying to feel pain and it just won't go in.
I'm sorry. Is that what, the cartridge? Or what's not going in?
The pain.
Okay, well, you know what? We're gonna have to unpack that one later, I guess.
I mean, we can swap out Metroid Dread for Other M for you if you would prefer to just play that instead.
Man, now I'm sad again.
There we go. Well, of course, it is Metroid Week here on Nintendo Noise, and we had to have Max come in as the resident Metroid expert. It's funny because I think when we initially talked about bringing you on to talk about this game, Max, we were like, none of us know anything about Metroid. I don't even know, like, if we're going to have, I know Chuy had intended on playing it. Steve was, like, very on the fence. Who knew? And then I go away for a weekend, I come back, and all you guys can talk about is Metroid. So we're going to have a hell of an episode here for you, talking about Metroid Dread and our OLED Switch impressions for those of us who have them. So we got a lot to jump into, but before we do that, let me just tell you real quick that, of course, this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of October. They are I almost just said question, like as if it started with a Q. I went to Comic-Con this weekend and slept very little, so you got to forgive me on a couple of these flubs today, folks, okay? But that's, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, a.k.a. That Doc Guy, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support keeping these mics on. All right, so we've also got some plugs to get into. Speaking of Patreon, you can give us at any support level. You'll get access to One More Thing, our Patreon exclusive show where Steve and I get together and talk about what else is going on in our lives outside of video games. We talked about Bake Off episode 2. We've been kind of doing a show within the show where we review what's going on Bake Off/Bake Show. And I got to say, it's been fun.
Yeah, I'm itching to talk to you about episode 3. It was phenomenal. I can't wait.
Haven't seen it yet. I got to watch it before we record tomorrow. I'm very excited. That's going to be my evening, I think. But we also talked about like stand-up comedy and a couple other things. It was a fun conversation. So even if you're not into Bake Off/Bake Show, there's plenty of One More Thing for you. And of course, that's the best way to show your support, the Patreon, and you get a little bit of extra content from us, as well as a bunch of other cool perks that you can get. Like you can get access to our Twitch archive, over on twitch.tv/flipscreengames every Thursday. We're getting together and playing games. This past week, Steve played a little Clubhouse games with a couple of the crew.
I don't want to talk about it.
No, I do though.
Just pretend I never ever spoke about. I never played Mancala with anyone.
Now here's the thing, though, Steve.
Quite good at Mancala last week.
Steve comes in. He's very hot. He thinks he's a Mancala champ. He's ready to take on Chuy, and Chuy didn't even give him the time of the day. He's like, "Yeah, all right, bud. We'll get on the stream and we'll see what happens." Chuy didn't even need to trash talk, and from what I've seen, Steve frankly embarrassed himself, which is
it was horrific. It was horrific. 42-6.
That's rough.
I lost.
I'm pretty sure that's the worst score you can get.
Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. No, I genuinely think it probably is. Chuy's playstyle. It was you were hoarding all the beans on your side of the board. It was not fair. Absolutely not fair. There was nothing I could do but put beans in my pot, and then Chuy just cleared the board, and I was like, "What the hell just happened?" I had no idea what happened.
I heard you guys talking about this last week, about that you were going to play this game, and I was like, oh yeah, I should definitely look that up so that I have a frame of reference. I haven't done that, so this is beans in pots. This is all going way over my head still.
I'll tell you this, Max. Steve explained the game to me, and I still think it's very confusing, but probably easier to
I
play
taught
than.
Doc. I taught Doc on stream, so I think it's learnable. It's fairly easy to pick up, but apparently not easy to master like Chewy has. Because I
That's
thought
why
I
you
was
haven't
good
done
at
it,
this
Steve.
game.
It's tough. It's tough. I've got a pretty good record on that one because I'd play online with random people, and every once in a while I'd find somebody who like knew what they were doing, and I was like, "Sweet, we're gonna have some good games right now."
I appreciate that. Like, I feel like Chewy's multiplayer persona. He's like, "Oh yeah, come back to me if you find another game that you think you're good at." You know.
Just looks like a weekly pill like pot where you sort out your pills
It
Monday,
does
Tuesday,
look like a
Wednesday,
dubstep
Thursday,
bot.
Friday.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So if you want to learn how to help your gran get her pills all organized, maybe you should check out Mount But anyway, there's a lot of other places you can find us all around the web. But of course, the easiest way to do that is to just head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website. We've got links to our Twitter, our Discord, our email address where you can write in and be part of the question block or our main topics, just like a bunch of folks did this week. But if you do want to write in, of course, you can hit us at questions@flipscreen.games. But come join the Discord. That's the best way to come get your thoughts in for the show. Keep the conversation rolling with the rest of the community. It's a good group of folks. It's a fun, safe, inclusive place for you to come and talk video games. So come and join us. Come have some fun. So let's get into the main event here, right? What we're playing, the main topic, it's all the same thing. It's Metroid Dread. Max, you are the Metroid fan, right? You are the guy. So coming off the bench here, this is obviously a game that's been a long time in the making. I know Metroid 5 famously was announced, revealed, canceled, disappeared for forever, came back, and it's already out. So this is a resolution of a long journey for you as a fan. How do you feel about the game? Do you feel like it lived up to your expectations and the hype that you had for it? How are you feeling after? I know you've beaten it already, and you're already into your second run through, so that's probably a good sign.
Trying to get the speed runs going. Can I swear?
Yeah, fucking A, let's go.
Yeah, cool. The best way I can describe this game and how I feel about this game is it's basically everything I love about video games. It's just a big fucking maze full of puzzles that I can get lost in, but I can do it as my favourite video game character ever, and she controls better than she's ever controlled, and possibly ever will control. Like, it's just so... It's like taking everything from the previous games, all of the quality of life stuff, all of the sort of improvements, everything they did with Samus Returns, and then improving on it even more, putting it in this gigantic world and making it, feel at home again. It feels like playing Metroid, because it literally is. And it's just, like you say, it was cancelled all those years ago, and it's always just been one of those, like, oh, maybe it will happen one day. Every single direct from, like, 2008 onwards, I was like, or not even direct, like E3, I was like, maybe they'll do it, and they never did. But here we are, living the dream. And honestly, what is better than having the game and enjoying the game is seeing everyone else's reaction to the game. Like, I know that Steve had never, we talked before about how Steve hadn't played the games, and now here he is, he's finished it and he loves it and he clearly wants to talk about it. And, you pick one that's up, Pete.
I was so dead against picking this game up and trying it, and I've been for like months talking about how I don't like Metroidvanias, they're not for me, blah, 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 blah. And then I ended up cancelling my Far Cry 6 pre-order just so I could play this game because I saw the reviews coming out. We also spoke to Nintendo last week, heard about how good this game actually is, and I was like, I really, really need to play this. And it was definitely the right decision. Definitely.
It's interesting what Richard was saying last week about when he was saying, oh yeah, I was one of those people, I didn't like Metroidvanias, and then he played Ori and he was like, oh, actually I really like this. And then his review of this was like a 9.5 out of 10. So he obviously really loved this game, and I think it's, on my second playthrough, I don't know if you guys have felt this as newcomers, that it does do a very good job of easing you into some of the concepts. Like, it gives you time to pause and learn your moves, and the opening level sort of shows you, okay, here, this is how you slide, this is how you fire a rocket, this is how you do X, Y, Z. And then, slowly you start picking up powers and more and more and more. And then by the end of it, without even realizing it, you've gone from being, fairly weak at the start in comparison to this absolute machine of death, just rolling around, carving through enemies, like barely getting hit. And it's nice the way that it does that, and it eases you in even from the very, very beginning of the game. And there's not like a massive jump in power all of a sudden. You're just constantly getting better and better.
Yeah, I'd say from my like initial experience with it too, I definitely relate to that. I played Super Metroid over the summer because I was like, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what this Metroid stuff's all about. I I ran into some issues where I was just like, man, I can tell this game is a little old, but it's still really great, but it's definitely got some things that can be like cleaned up
Mhm.
and everything. So this game, like immediately it just felt like, oh, this is what I wanted Super Metroid to feel like when I was playing. So
Yeah.
that was nice. But then on top of that, it was like I ran into a lot of walls in Super Metroid where I was just like, well, now I don't know what to do. Let's just run around and see. And I'd spend a lot of time doing that a lot more frequently in that game than in Dread. And I feel like as far as like progression goes, it feels like a lot more I guess it just feels like they got it right with
Mhm.
Dread in the sense of like I haven't felt like I've slowed down really dramatically until maybe the past few hours right now as I'm running around.
Mm.
But it took a lot longer for me to get to that point than, Super Metroid did.
I had like a similar thought process, but I sort of had negative connotations at the beginning. I felt the game was funneling me a little bit too much, so much so that I kind of felt it was a little bit linear, because right at the beginning of the game, it sort of magically blocks off areas where you can't go back to, and I was like, there's no real explanation as to how those areas got blocked off, but it clearly wants me to go in this direction. But there's like a turning point in the game, and there's no real like, here is where you kind of let loose and do what you want. But it no longer seems to do that anymore.
Mhm.
It gives you the new power up, and then it's up to you to figure out where to go with that. Whereas at the beginning, like the first 3 power ups, it's now you need to go into the next area. Now you need to go into the next area. Which I quite liked. It was like you're learning all of this stuff, you're gathering the experience, and then it's like, right, you're free to now go and explore, especially once you've got like 3 or 4 of the zones, and you can just go back and forth between them all.
I think
Yeah.
so I've played the least of the game by a lot. So I know, Steve, you've beaten it. Chuy, you're probably about maybe halfway through it, it sounds like.
I would guess, yeah.
Yeah, because you're what, 4 or 5 hours in?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And I'm probably just over an hour. Like I know we were talking about setting it by landmarks, so I looked at my thing. The last thing I did was get the charge beam. And I've done some exploring since then. So I'm still very in the beginning of the game. I just started it up earlier today. Like I said, I was away for New York Comic Con. Had my beautiful OLED Switch show up for me on Friday while I was already in New York. And so that was a bummer. But I have gotten.
Did anyone not get a white OLED Switch at this point? I've only seen pictures of white ones. I don't think the neon one actually exists.
For those of you who are listening on audio, both Max and I showed up our OLED Switches, and Chuy pulled out his Wii U gamepad.
That's the CRT Switch, isn't it?
Yes, of course. You know what? I'd buy the CRT Switch. That's a great idea.
I'm sure you would.
It's funny. I literally just pulled that out yesterday because I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some stuff with the Wii U later, so I might as well set it up.
I really thought you were going to be like, you know what? I'm going to use this to troll the guys later. I better pull this out. Is this a bit? He just was like, oh, this is going to be amazing.
What you were saying just then? Sorry, Pete, did you still have a point?
Yeah, sorry. I was
Go on.
establishing how far I had gotten to make a point, because I think in that early part of the game that I'm still in, I had a moment just before I sat down to get ready to play here, or I'm sorry, record here and stop playing, where I felt like the rhythm of the game was clicking for me. And that's always the thing that turns me off from Metroidvanias. Steve and I have talked about them a lot in the lead up to Metroid Dread, and I feel like I always end up hitting that point that Chuy's talking about very early on, where it's just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I get like a bit of like I don't know, I guess like anxiety about it, because I have that thought of like, well, I want to go everywhere, and I want to make sure I'm exploring every nook and cranny and getting every collectible and everything as I'm progressing, so I'm not, missing things. And
There's a term for that.
But that's the
it's
problem.
an ADHD
You
term.
can't. in a Metroidvania, right? You can't get every collectible as you go.
Exactly.
Because you need to get the power-ups to come back
Go round
later.
and round.
And I
Choice
think
paralysis. That's what it kind of feels like, right?
Yes.
Choice paralysis of like, I've got too many things to do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Max. And I think that, like, coupled with it being 2D environments that I'm exploring, it leads to this sense of, like, just getting lost and feeling, like, confused, and it, will either turn me off to a game or it'll, like, limit how often I feel like picking it up, and then I kind of just lose momentum on it, right? Like, that's what happened to me with Hollow Knight. Like, I was enjoying it, but it was like, oh, yeah, like, this is really, like, a thinking man's game, and if I'm tired or whatever and I don't feel like playing it, I'll rather just play a platformer, right, where I can just focus on the mechanics of it, not being like, where am I on the map and where should I be going? Whereas something I'm really appreciating with Dread is that in this, kind of preamble, while it's teaching me to play, I am feeling like it's funneling me from section to section, but it's not telling me, well, go here. It's like, no, you're in this section now. How do I get whatever I need to get here and escape? And having that added pressure of, the Emmy areas, which at first I really was like, oh, I don't like this. Like, this is like, it's stressful, and it's making me feel like I can't explore the environment, and it's making me feel like I just want to get out of here as soon as possible. But then I was like, oh, right, this is the point of this, is to force me to frantically get to the next place.
Feeling. That's the initial feeling I had, which was, oh, the Emmys coming towards me. This is really scary. These are horrible. They're going to take me down. As the game progressed, I got more and more and more annoyed with them, to the point where I was just like, I'm just going to run through this and hope that the Emmy spawns in a different place. Because it was like, it's really luck of the draws. If I walk in here, is the Emmy right there? Or is the Emmy in another room in this zone? And it was tedious. I didn't like them. They really slowed the pace of the game down. The fact that you can't really combat them, it's just random as to whether you hit X in time or not. And then you get a game over screen. No, then you get that stupid cutscene. Then you get the game over screen. Then you have to load back in, and then you're right back at the start of the Emmy zone. And it's like, all I wanted to do was get through this so I can go to the door that I need to go and unlock. And I just found that was the one thing about this game I actively disliked, were the Emmy zones.
My issue with the Emmy zones wasn't specifically just the Emmy. Obviously, they were quite annoying, and there was one in particular where it was like a water area, and I knew I couldn't move in water, and it was much faster than me. I was like, right, I need to get here. I think it took me about 12 attempts to get to where I needed to go. But it's not the actual Emmy being there, because that's temporary. It's when you defeat the Emmy, and then it's sort of like this big, kind of almost pointless spot in the middle of the map, of every map. Well, there might be a few power-ups, but because it's essentially the room is designed for you to look around, duck, hide. Yeah. So it's like basically like an obstacle course for you and the Emmy to both go on, so you can try and lose it. But once you defeat the Emmy, you've then got this big empty, space that then takes up a large portion of the map. That really there's not a lot to do in there. There's a few secrets in there and stuff, but it's not the same. It's not the same environment, from a design standpoint. And I think when I look at the map, I'm like, wow, that's quite a big area for each level. But actually, if you were to take out that Emmy zone in the middle, it would be a lot smaller. Which I think is why I was able to finish the game like 100% quite quickly, because I knew that large portions of this map weren't going to have secrets in, because it was the Emmy zone, so they're not going to sort of hide a bunch of stuff in there. It's interesting.
There's a couple in the Emmy zones, though. There are a few in the Emmy zones.
Yeah, but there's not like it's not as dense as it is in some of the other areas, because they're quite open, whereas the other ones are a lot of corridors, aren't they? It's interesting what you said, Steve, about the the opening of the game funneling you, sort of pushing you gently towards it, because that's how I felt even playing the second time. And I've said this a couple of times now, that the opening of the game, or the first half of the game, sort of feels like Fusion, in that you are going from sort of point to point, talking to Adam. He's saying, "Oh yeah, you've done this. Now you can go here." And then there's a point halfway through the game where it sort of starts to ease off a bit, and you do start to explore more, and it becomes more like Super Metroid, when you become more powerful, and then you're like, right, I'm not moving between Emmy zones. I'm not, I don't have to avoid these certain areas. I can just go and explore and do whatever I want. And that's when it sort of becomes less like Retrofusion and more like Super Metroid, where you can just go and explore and look around, even more so than like Zero Mission, which was still quite confined.
That's when I really started to like the game. I'm curious, Max, did you see the sequence breaking stuff that was floating around on Twitter? Have you dabbled with any of that before?
I have. So I've sequence broke, sequence Help me out.
Sequence broke.
A sequence broke. I used to sequence break a lot in like Zero Mission. I used to, like, when I was younger, I used to sit for ages, like not looking up other people's sequence breaks, but trying to find my own. There was one. It's like a half an hour of gameplay time it took me to just get as soon as I got the morph ball and the bombs, to get the Varia suit early in Zero Mission, and it adds, more time than it actually takes off. But the fact that I was able to do that just through like bomb jumping, wall jumping, and all that stuff was quite impressive. So when I started playing this game, and I was like, oh, you can do infinite bomb jumping. Oh, you can do, shine sparking. Oh, there's wall jumping. I was like, this is going to get interesting. But there's actually a lot more than I even thought. I've seen some of the stuff on Twitter where some of the speed boost people are doing, and they're speed boosting into a wall and then bouncing off the wall and keeping the speed boost. And I was like, that would have made the puzzle so much easier, because I'm like, right, where can I stop and shine spark, and then where's a slope that I can start my shine spark back into a speed booster? But all you need to do is just run into a wall and bounce off it. I was like, oh, it's so simple. So I think some of this stuff is going to be really easy. There was a boss battle that I went back to find an item in that area. Got to the boss battle and was like, oh, my, where it shows all the breakable blocks that you just got, Chuy. I was like, well, that's showing something over there. I went over there and there was like a little bomb and like a speed booster that sends the ball out. And I was like, that would kill the boss in like one hit. And I was like, could I have done that? But actually the bombs come after that boss battle. So I was like, well, obviously there's an intended sequence break there to get the bombs early to do that boss trick. I was like, well, there must be loads of them just dotted around the game that I don't know about or that people haven't found yet. And that's what's exciting, is that we're just getting our hands on this game. And there's already like a spreadsheet I've seen of people like trying to keep track of all this sequence breaks, trying like, oh yeah, I've got a theory that this might work, and there's like 10 people working on it at once. And it's quite exciting to see. I'd like to get involved in that, but I'd like to learn the game myself first before I start picking up other people's sequence breaks, basically.
Yeah. Doesn't that just show how in tune the developers are this time to the Metroid fan base, though, that they've put those in on purpose, and that there are specific like ways you can defeat bosses early if you've managed to get these power-ups early, which obviously the game doesn't intend you to do.
But yeah, they've obviously, I don't know if they've just built things in, or they've as they're playing the game gone, oh, actually you can actually get here early, and they've gone, keep it in, just keep it in. But it's almost like an Easter egg, I guess, where it goes, when they've done that, let's reward them with something, which is good. I mean, I know they couldn't really do that in Samus Returns because of the way it was based on Metroid 2, and it was very much you stay in this area, you kill the 5 Metroids, then you move on. It wasn't like a big interconnected world. It was eventually, but it was very much finish here, move on, finish here, move on, finish here, move on. But now they've had a chance to create something from scratch, and they can really just let loose and have a lot of fun with it, and they clearly have.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I actually think the last power up I got might have been a sequence break, because I definitely played around with like the bomb trick and bouncing myself up to get to a certain area. Yeah. So I don't think I got it the way people would normally get it.
Probably
so
why you're a bit lost then.
That might be.
I'm so lost. I'm so lost right now.
Yeah, you're probably
Luckily,
like you probably opened a bunch of stuff you weren't supposed to, and you're just like ending up in the wrong order.
Yeah. And luckily, the area that it did take me to, I was like, oh, I have no way out of here except for like back. So I was able to just go back and get back to wherever I was. But now I'm just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I think
what's good about getting... Oh, sorry, Pete, go on.
I was gonna just say real quick. I think something that I noticed right away too is I really like the map. I feel like the map is very, very like, it's very well coded. I
so well coded.
That's the thing I also don't usually like about Metroidvanias, is how much I have to be like, I don't know where I am. Let me look at the map and try to orient myself in this space. But I feel like all of the like different color codings, there's like symbols that are being used over and over again. I'm like starting to understand the visual language of the map already, and
you can recognize rooms by the shape of them, whereas usually it's just a square.
Right, exactly, and like I found like when I get to the Emmy Zones, the first thing I'm doing is pausing and trying to like scan and be like, okay, I need to go up and to the left. Next room, stop. Where do I have to go? Okay. And like that normally is something that turns me off, but I think because the map is so simple and digestible, I don't feel like I'm having to sit and scan, or not, I guess sit and like really drink it in. I can just kind of glance at it, get the information I need, and then get back into the action,
Towards the end of the game, I was going to say, towards the end of the game, I was...
I was going to say the other thing I like about the map is you click left on the D-pad and it just gets bigger for a little second. And you can then just quickly orient yourself, especially in the Emmy zones where you want to see where that red dot is, if it's coming towards you, if it's going away from you. Just make it stand still so you're not doing any movement and not making any noise. Make it a little bit bigger, and then it goes away when you don't want it around. It works really, really well.
I have a question for you guys about Emmy. I'm sorry, Max, did you have another point about the map before we move on?
I was going to say about the Emmy, but you do your...
Okay, cool. Well, this will probably transition well then. When you get to an Emmy zone, like, did you find yourself playing stealthily at any point, like quietly trying to move around, or was it always just like running and gunning?
I went in guns blazing, and then if he was coming near to me and like it was going yellow, I would then go stealthy.
Yeah, you'd like cling to the ceiling, or you'd hide in a corner. I like the little ball holes where you just like hop in, turn invisible, and then like he's like sniffing at you, and you're just like, nope, I'm fine, I'm safe here. But then as soon as you then move again, if he catches onto you and you've not got a full Aeon bar, you're like, okay, cool, this is it for me.
Yeah, I think the Emmy zones, I'm at one that's probably one of the more annoying ones that I've found. And it's just like, I don't know if it's just going to be in the way when I walk in. It's a yellow one. It's really fast. Just really chases you all over the place. That one, with some of the powers that I've gotten at this point, I think I've been having more fun with that one, funny enough, because I've hit that point with the Emmys where I'm just like, why'd you spawn here? Just kill me. Let me try this again. Hopefully I can get through. But with some of the stuff that I have now, I'm just like, oh, it's kind of fun dodging through and getting away from these things and then going invisible for a bit. And, there's a lot of tools that I think I'm playing with a lot more that I haven't so much in the rest of the zones. But now that I'm like seeing that, I'm like, oh, I can do some funky things with these powers here.
I'm glad to hear
the
that.
rest of the world.
Yeah, because that was something that I think the last zone I got into, I think it's the second or third one I've seen overall so far. I felt like it was laid out in a way where it was easier to play stealthily and to like be quiet and wait for them to pass by and things like that. And I liked that more because the thing that I think each of you have mentioned once that was the first thing that I didn't like about the game was where the first, I think the not the first Emmy zone that's the tutorial, but the first one you get to naturally.
The white one, the white Emmy.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the white one. I had like multiple times where I died and then would come in the door and it was just at the door scanning.
And it seems so unfair, right? It's like this is just it's punishing me for just playing the game, and like I said, that's the one thing I actively disliked about it was the spawning, and I think that could be tweaked if they made it so it spawned a little bit further away from the door and it didn't randomly spawn right there. It would feel a little bit fairer.
And I think even if it was sometimes it spawned there, like, I don't know, like if it was like a Dark Souls-esque thing where like I ran in for the first time and I just immediately die and I'm like, oh, this is an Emmy zone, now I know that.
Time to learn.
Yeah, that would be okay. But it's like when and this is another thing about them that I didn't like was that like every time you die, I totally get that like a big thing in a lot of Metroidvanias is having like save points rather than because if you save in every single room, then there's like, the sense of progression is going to get messed up. Fair enough. But in the Emmy zones, I feel like I would have a run where I would get really far and then I would know where I had to go, but then I'm dead and I don't have the map. So I have to like muscle memory my way back there. And I had that happen where I got to that zone, I made it really close, and I was like, okay, I know exactly where I gotta go, I got this. And then he spawned in front of the fucking door 5 times, and I was like, I don't remember the order now, I have to figure this out again, and like, that frustrated me because I felt like, oh, I know where I'm going, like, I'm getting this, I'm digging it, and then it was like, fuck you, you don't know. and
Mhm.
I really like killed my momentum for a second there, and it was annoying because I literally like the last time it happened where they spawned in front of the door, I literally was like, fucking come on, and then it spawned somewhere else, and I walked through the entire zone without even seeing it, you know? And I was like, somewhere between those two things would be
It's
great.
like beating a boss in Dark Souls where you're just like dead, and then the last time you do it, you're like, he didn't even touch me. What's
Yeah, I
going
just
on
one-shotted him somehow. I kicked him off a
Yeah.
ledge, like, you know, something weird like that. Like, it just felt like, it felt like the game could tell I was mad and threw me a bone.
It heard you screaming. I think the Emmys do a good job of like being like an anchor for like at any point in the game where, like where Chewie, you know, he's quite lost right now. He's got a new item. He knows what he needs to do. However, you know, you always know in the back of your mind, okay, I know what Emmy I'm on, so I know that if I go back there, I can get an idea of maybe where I'm supposed to go from that zone. And I think that also helps, like you said, like Chewie also said, how now that he has more abilities, he feels like he can have more fun with the Emmy. You know, you can dash around them, you can be, you know, hide from them, jump around them, and do all of these things. And I think that the more items you get, I think it's a good analogy for all, like, you know, the whole genre or Metroid in general, I guess, is that you become more powerful, and then you can feel that. And because you're fighting an enemy that's always as dangerous as the first enemy you fight, you feel yourself getting better, and you feel yourself being more powerful because now you're like, oh, I'm just going to jump away from you then. Oh, I'm just going to run and hide. Oh, I don't have to worry about you as much as I did before because now I'm more powerful and you're just as powerful as you always were. And it's, you know, I think like they are annoying, but by the end of the game, you feel like, oh yeah, I can take that. I can take that.
Yeah,
I can
which
definitely
I'm
take
looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having more tools to use against them and feel like a little bit less powerless because I like that it's giving me that, oh shit.
that.
You
But-
know what though? I kind of feel like you always feel powerless. The blue one in particular, Max. Like there's
Tough.
you always the timing has to be perfect on shooting that and then like hitting it.
That was really like that was more stressful, I think, than trying to get through the zones for me. Was like, I need to find a stretch of room long enough that I can
Great, yeah.
aim my beam, destroy its face, and then go somewhere else and then get the shot on it. Because like there were times where I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna break its face, and I was like, no, I'm not, and I just had to like just sprint and dash, and it was like coming after me. Or when you finally take its face off, and then it's now much faster, so you're like, okay, I just need to do the same thing again. But because he's just absolutely gunning for you, you're like, okay, right, I need to be much quicker than this. I need to be much faster.
Yeah, I feel like if
that
that
felt very
parry was like a hair more forgiving, it would be less frustrating.
But
And I don't
was
think it
very
would
good when you
remove
get
the
it.
tension.
It was very good when you get it.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I haven't done it yet. I do like the parry mechanic in general. I like they are very much like you have a 99% chance of dying. It's like if it was like a 90% chance, I feel like I'd feel like I need like a half a second more, you know? Like
Yeah, I think it was Christian I was talking with on Twitter about it, one of our Patreon producers, and he was saying if it was like half the length of like a normal enemy, you'd still get the sense that wow, the Emmy are so fucking powerful and fast, but you'd still have that chance to knock them out
sure.
and not and then not disrupt the flow of the game, because that's all it really does is it just kicks you back to the start of the Emmy zone, and it's just an annoyance. So I think it's trying to force you to play a little bit stealthily, to hide and be a little bit more calculated, which maybe is what you're meant to do in like the boss battles, and that's what it's trying to train you to do.
And I do think to some extent, like it's also trying to teach you to recognize the Emmy sequences, because I do notice like it cuts into that cutscene and they have, I think I've noticed like 2 or 3 distinct like different angles that the Emmy's viewing you from, and I'm like, oh, I think there's like a certain timing attributed to each of these, and like once you learn them, you probably have an easier time getting that block, because I've been getting a lot more successful at doing the block and parrying and just getting out of the way, but it's definitely still really difficult. I miss it most of the time, but I do get it a lot more now, and I'm just like, oh, I think I'm just trying to learn recognizing what cutscene is this, what's the timing associated with this cutscene, and how can I hopefully get out so I don't start over.
I'd be so curious to know if that's true, because I was at the beginning I was counting seconds and like
Mhm.
seeing it exactly when it would hit, and it was seemingly random based on what it was, but I didn't discern that it was different cutscenes and things, so I would be very curious if the timing is
Yeah,
set to a
there's one
specific
I'm way
cutscene.
better at responding to because it's like I think it's like the Emmy has one hand up and like charging up, and I'm like that one I can get more often than any of the others.
Interesting. By the end of the week, there'll be a full list of the timings, and
Oh, for sure.
we'll be
Yeah.
expert.
I love the idea of like somebody's like going in frame by frame and they're like, okay, you need to stop watching at exactly this second.
Someone just hits the home button as soon as they go to the Emmy. They're like, right, I'm pretty sure it was facing this with one arm up. Okay, scroll through the spreadsheet. All right, count to 3.
I love that. All right, so let's jump into some questions from the listeners about this because we've still got a lot of Metroid conversation to go here. So this one comes from Wakahula, one of our Patreon producers, who wrote in and said, after playing Metroid Dread for a few days now, how would you rank it in terms of difficulty compared to some other contemporary Metroidvanias like Ori, Hollow Knight, or Dead Cells? What do you think, Max?
I don't think Ori is hard in terms of actual difficulty. I think Ori is, by design, a trial and error platformer. So I think Ori's not maybe part of that conversation because you're supposed to just die over and over and over again until you get it, right? But I think compared to Hollow Knight, I think Hollow Knight's sort of harder in the fact that death has more of a consequence than Metroid Dread does. In Hollow Knight, like Dark Souls, you die, you lose your currency, and it does have that. The bosses are very hard, and there's a lot of optional bosses, and you can sequence break much more obviously and get into harder bosses. I think the difficulty in Dread is more the random spawning of the Emmys. So I think I'd say Hollow Knight's probably harder, from a skill based thing. But I think if we're talking like luck based, Metroid Dread's probably harder just because of the Emmy, like you said, the Emmy spawning, the small window of opportunity you have. Yeah.
So,
I'm
Steve,
curious
have you
about that.
played?
I really want to play Hollow Knight. I played like
Yes.
10. I played like 2 hours of that game. I got to the first boss, and I kept losing all my currency. And I was like, "Fuck this! I'm out of this game. This is too hard. It's not for me. I don't like this at all." But now, having played Metroid Dread, I've got a bit of a taste for learning those boss battles. I hated
Here we
like
go.
I thought Metroid Dread was extremely difficult. It took me about 12 hours to finish the game compared to I've seen times of around 7 for most people. That did involve me going back and spending an hour and a half looking for more energy after I tried the boss battle to begin with. I went in with 7 canisters. I ended up coming back with 9.
What's the maximum?
Ultimately
10 maximum?
12, I think.
12, okay.
Ultimately, I didn't need them. I beat him with like 6 energy canisters left.
Oh, wow,
I just
okay.
wasn't learning the battle well enough. And that's all these battles are about. And I think it's kind of Soulsy in that regard, in that it is just learning the moves and learning what the next animation's going to be. And I think if
Visual
you
patterns,
do
right?
that, I could see the next playthrough me just blasting through it because those bosses, I'm going to know exactly what they're going to do at any given time.
So it's something I like with Metroid games anyway. In like by the end you're super powerful. You're just running through the old areas, creaming through enemies, whatever. And that translates very well into Dark Souls as well. Where whenever I've beaten a Souls game, whether it be Sekiro or Bloodborne or Dark Souls, I finish the game and immediately start New Game Plus, and then just start speedrunning. Like now I've unlocked the game in my head, and I'm also a bit more powerful because you're playing a New Game Plus. I would just run to the first boss, and I know that first boss would have smashed me like 100 times at the start of the game, and I just do it first time. I'm like, yes, this feels good, and then you just like by the time you realize it, you're like 4 bosses in, and you've learnt the game and you know all their patterns, and you're like, yeah, whatever, parry, kill, dodge, whatever. And it's just like in the Matrix when he's like, I know kung fu. It just clicks, and yeah, I think that's going to happen with what happens with these bosses as well, where something just clicks and you just go through.
I hope so. I could not believe when it said hard mode now unlocked after I finished the game, and I was like, that was not hard. Like, that was ridiculously hard for me.
I'm going to learn the game on normal mode. I'm going to do like a speed run or a couple of playthroughs, and then I'm going to try hard mode, I think. But for Hollow Knight, I reckon you should delete your save file in Hollow Knight. Start from the beginning so you have like a fresh idea of it, and you're not tainted by, you're not in there like, where am I? Where am I supposed to go? And I reckon you're
Mhm.
gonna have a
I
really good
never
time with
left.
that
Is
game.
it Hallow Nest? I never left there.
Yeah,
Never got out.
First boss. Is it the big knight with the mace? That's the first boss,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can hear his music in
I'll
my
have to
head.
play it. I have it, but I haven't played it yet. I decided I was like, you know what? I don't have much experience with Metroidvanias. I'm gonna start with like Super Metroid before I assume Hollow Knight ruins them for me. So
If I do one thing with my time here and I convince at least one of you to play Hollow Knight, I'd have done my job. I convinced one of you to play Metroid Dread, just through sheer just
Force of
annoyance.
will.
Determination.
Yeah. I fought it so hard that Steve did it.
One thing we haven't spoke about, and I know it's not in the questions piece, so sorry for breaking the whole format of this show.
You do your
But
thing,
I'm
man.
curious, Max and Chewy as well, because I guess you're in the middle of playing Super Metroid. What do you think about the presentation of this game? Because obviously it's not quite 2D, not quite 3D. There are a lot of 3D cutscenes. There are a lot of areas where it changes perspective. It like zooms out. It kind of can switch into like sort of a 45-degree angle when you're aiming at the Emmys and things like that. How do you feel about that? Because I quite liked that it gave me that sense of, wow, this is a vast kind of open space when it like zooms out, pans out, and you're into the next zone. And it's like, this is really, really cool. I liked it, and I don't think I kind of want to go back to a full 2D game now.
I think Chewy probably has the best frame of reference here, having come from Super Metroid straight into Metroid Dread. You've probably seen the massive amount of change, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Super Metroid definitely had a lot of surprises for me. Like it has like little cutscenes and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, dang, this is on the Super Nintendo. That's pretty cool. Good job." But like going into Metroid Dread, this is not going to be a spoiler, but there is a moment in that like first cutscene where I was just like, "Is this going to be like third person, surprisingly, or first person in one point?" And I was just like, man, I really want to play Metroid Prime now. This looks great.
Yeah.
So yeah, visually, I think it's so good. It's so it's like I was saying, like I played Super Metroid. I could tell it was old. Still really great game, but like just everything has been updated in a way that it's like exactly what the series needed, especially for at least like, what's gonna be the end of this story arc or whatever. So
Oh, I
yeah.
don't think it's the end at all.
I mean, who knows?
I hope
see.
it's not the
We'll
end. I want another
see.
one of these. Like
15 more
next
years,
Yeah.
Steve. Don't worry about it. Now you're a Metroid fan. Part of that is suffering.
It is.
Yeah, it
good,
is.
yeah, but the good thing is,
the gang.
I know, but I'm well in there, Max. But the good thing is, I've got four more of these I can play now that I haven't played before.
And all
so
the Prime games that you haven't played
yeah,
yet.
and all the
Yeah.
Prime games, which
And
I'll
I'll
definitely
say,
play on a legitimate system.
and the other good thing is, my guess is this one's probably already outsold all of those combined. So
In the UK, it's sort of been whoever game business, the guy that runs that, GameIndustry.biz rather, has been sort of tweeting all day about the stats that this is like it's outsold, already outsold Samus Returns in the UK. It's already had the best debut of any Metroid game in the UK. That's just physical, no digital included. So this is obviously done big for Nintendo and for big in terms of Metroid.
mhm.
But I also think that was down to a massive marketing campaign, and hopefully that translates into good sales, and hopefully it has its
Yeah.
Fire Emblem Awakening moment where Nintendo go, oh, this is a series we need to put more attention to. Obviously, we
Yeah.
already know Metroid Prime 4 is coming, but if they go, oh, Mercury's team, why don't you just do another 2D Metroid? But if it's not a sequel, then it's something, if they want to do something else or they want to.
But even like Samus Returns on the Switch, I'd take that. Like at this point, you've already made the game. Just upscale it and add the menu system that you've done for Dread.
Change the
Put it all
controls
together
around
in a
so it's like the
yeah.
Dread controls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it in a
And
nice
it's not on a
package.
3DS.
Yeah. To hop back into the presentation thing, I think a lot of what I like about Super Metroid Fusion, all these Metroid games before, is the sense of immersion you get from they're quite atmospheric and you're sort of lost in these worlds. And I think having that whole like chopping and changing camera giving you a sense of scale just adds another layer to it, almost like the 3D did in Samus Returns, right? You could see into the background of these like the glistening cavern or like the
Oh yeah.
the water areas, you could see things in the background in the 3D moving, and because it was in 3D effects, you could sort of see things.
And at
That was
some
that
points,
was that
like
immersion.
in the foreground, right? There's that
Yeah,
one cool time that I don't want to spoil, where it's like it's in the foreground, and then it like sort of moves into kind of the play plane that
yeah,
you're
yeah,
on.
yeah. So in Dread, they have that in the way that they move the camera around. So when you're like, there's an example that was posted on Twitter earlier that is, there's one of the sort of the station, the tram stations. The tram. What would you call that? Like a subway? I don't know. There's one of those where like you are going outside for a second, and there's like a bit where you can just stand there, and the camera's zoomed out, and you can just see like this big ocean behind you, and there's obviously like the planet behind you, and you can see it all. And because it's zoomed out and you can see it all, you really get a sense of scale and like a sense of awe that you didn't really get before, I guess,
Yeah.
with Super Metroid. So where it doesn't have, well, sorry, where it also has the sort of atmospheric loneliness that Super Metroid has, it also now has this ability to show you more than it could show you before. And I think that's great. I think it not to jump ahead of the question, but it really does lend to the question of, is this worth the price it's worth?
What a transition, Max. What a professional. All right, so this one's we're gonna jump into this series of questions from one of our Patreon producers, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, who wrote in and said, "First of all, I really hope we get a spoiler cast later on too. There's a lot to talk about here." Maybe so. We'll have to have Max back.
No,
I
it's
do, I'll
definitely
tell you that.
happening.
I think
But
when everyone's finished it.
I kind of feel like I need to go back and learn about the history of Metroid as well, because I have so many questions about the Chozo and all of this stuff. Like,
Some of the moments that you would have seen.
Oh,
Steve,
really, Steve?
for
I thought the
you
story was
like,
bad. Huh? Isn't that what you
I'm
said?
sorry,
Isn't that
I
what you
started
famously
Metroid
said?
Fusion, and the story at the beginning of Metroid Fusion is, I still think, terrible. If you don't know anything about Metroid,
well, there we
you
go.
just
There
get
we go. Why would you start at number 4 and go?
Yeah,
"Oh,
right.
they're not
He's
really-
like,
they're not-
oh,
why aren't they
it's-
holding my hand through
It's
this?"
really
I
terrible
got told to
if you
start on Metroid
if
Fusion
you come
by
into the
everyone.
fourth game in the series and you don't know anything. It's very confusing.
They
Return of the
barely introduced
Jedi,
Darth Vader
terrible
character. There we
movie.
go.
Who even is Luke Skywalker? Okay,
I
like
started Star Wars on episode 4, and that's the right place to start it.
Son of
Don't
a bitch.
Start
All right.
episode 1, right?
all right, that's enough. That's enough out of the
You-
peanut gallery.
I think there's moments that you would have enjoyed, Steve. That for me, I was like, oh my god, because obviously I've seen these.
Yeah,
through,
I know there's a few
I've-
moments. Everyone was freaking out about it all in the Discord. There's a
Yeah,
whole spoiler
ah.
thread over there.
I need to
Everyone
go
was
back and
just
read through that.
losing their minds over certain aspects.
I died specifically during a boss battle, so I could go back and watch the cutscene again.
True dedication. Anyway, so here are Sobi's. Here's the thing, though, Sobi. All right, 4 questions. 4. You have a patented 3-question system, sir. So I'm tabling question number 1 for right now. Okay, we're going right into question number 2. This is
we should
insane.
skip a
It's
question.
insane and absurd that you think you could just throw out 4. Okay, 3. It's a 3-question system. Number 2. What was your personal favorite moment so far while playing the game?
I don't
can't
think we
answer
can
that.
talk about it, right? No
I
one
think
can talk
Pete and
about
Chuy
it.
can, but I can't. I don't think you and I can talk about our favorite moments because it's like.
So I gotta say, as much as I hated the Emmys, taking some of them down gives you that like sense of achievement, especially that blue one that I spoke about.
Mhm.
But I really think it's the very end of the game that is my favorite moment in that, and I'm sure that's not the same for you, Max. I'm sure it's the point that every Metroid fan loves in the middle of that game.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah, I think no. I think. I mean, I said earlier, I was literally shaking during the end of it. I was like,
yeah.
"This is like everything that we've, it's like it's happening. Like I've dreamed of this for years, and it's happening." But yeah, I think there's a point during the middle, like I'm sure everyone had the same moment where,
Yeah.
it's just so Samus, like it's just so good.
I This is like gonna sound like a joke, but I think my favorite moment with the game so far was when I booted it up and I got the Metroid Dread screen, and I was like, "Whoa, these blacks are so black!" Because it's the first game I booted up on my OLED Switch.
You know that music. I love that music. The boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
boom.
yeah.
It's so good. So good. I love it.
Yeah.
What about you,
I
Chuy?
think
What was your favorite moment?
for me, I will say thus far, in order for people to know what sequence this is, I'll say Nintendo spoiled it. they'll know exactly what boss I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I just really, really enjoyed it. I just really liked that whole sequence. At one point, because probably after my 10th attempt or so, I was feeling it. I was just like, oh man, I understand my powers so well and know how to approach this boss so well. I think just feeling, that feeling of power, it was good.
Very nice. Chuy, while I read number 3, your camera's all blurry. Give it one of those hand jives. There you go. You got it. You're nailing it. All right.
Did it.
Number 3. What was this your first Metroid game or one of your first Metroid games? And if so, did the game make you want to play any of the older games? Max, why don't you start? Was this your first Metroid game?
Absolutely not. However, this is a great question that I feel like all of you should answer.
No, for me, like I did play some of Samus Returns on my dad's Game Boy Pocket years ago and had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I just kept spinning into a ball and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? And so didn't play much more of that. And I started Metroid Fusion earlier this year in kind of anticipation of wanting to see if I wanted to check out Dread. And I was like very down on the story at the beginning, and I was like, "This sucks. What's this orange shit seeping out of her suit?" I was like, "This is terrible." And you see the same beginning of Fusion at the beginning of Dread, and I was just like, "No, I kind of like this now." I was like, "This looks, I don't know, kind of gelled for me." But I'm going back, and I'm going to play. I'm probably going to play Fusion, which I'm sure Asobi would be happy about.
Number
Do
4
Zero
question for
Mission
Steve.
first.
Metroid Fusion stream when?
We'll see. We shall see. It's going to happen.
I'll say this,
stream
Steve.
some Metroid Fusion.
If you do start streaming Metroid Fusion, I think we should have Max be your co-pilot on that.
I'll co-pilot.
He could
No, 'cause I'll
midwife
backseat
you
game.
through that
I know
experience.
I'll backseat game. It'll be so frustrating because I'll know exactly the spot you need to drop a bomb, and Steve will be like, "To no one, I'm stuck. How am I? I'm soft locked," and I'll go, "No, you're not. No, you're not."
Wouldn't even know what that term was.
That's what Steve
But,
needs, though. You know, like with Ocarina of
Okay.
Time, that's all I'm doing, really. It's just like,
Tough
you got
love.
it, buddy. You got it. One more time.
Yeah, you know
Oh,
what,
actually,
Max? We're
genuine
not
love.
afraid. We're not afraid to whip out a guide either, because we played through Link's Awakening, and that temple with the stupid big ball that we were carrying around. We were checking the
yeah.
guide
Oh
every
my
2
God.
seconds for that.
That was the
thing.
first time
It
I
was
looked at a guide in
ridiculous.
that when I did my own playthrough of it, and when I saw that was where you were in the game, I was like, "Ah, fuck this, let's get the guide." Like we made like 2 moves, and I was like, "This dungeon is insane." Like,
Steve, did you open a guide at all in this game, like for any of the power ups or
Once.
anything? Yeah.
So I was so confused, and I think it's actually bad design. There's something you get that it basically, the gist of it and how I read it was, this doesn't work underwater. And I was like, where the fuck am I meant to go?
Can't gain height underwater is what it says, right?
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
I didn't interpret it as that. That's exactly what it says. My brain read that as, okay, this doesn't work underwater then. Can't gain height underwater. There's no point even trying. I'll go floating around. I used my scanner
Oh, you
thing.
were there
I
for ages.
I started bombing the floor. I got stuck in the floor at one point, and I was like, how the fuck do I get out of here now? It was a whole thing. So I was like, fuck this. The door's locked on me. Where the hell do I go? So I just opened up a guide, and it was like, jump across this area. And I'm like, that was it? Okay. So it does work underwater then.
Sometimes
Right, okay.
it's the simple explanation. Right?
don't you hate that?
Yeah.
I am so guilty of that in video games, and I think that's also one of the reasons that Metroidvanias are sometimes tough for me, is like, I'll just be like, okay, I must not be able to go forward anymore. Let me turn around and just run in reverse and end up way further back than I needed to be, just because
You
I
get
didn't
tunnel
realize I
vision,
could
don't
jump
you?
at an angle or something stupid.
Yeah, you
know?
get tunnel vision where
Yeah.
you look at it. It can't be that because that's too obvious.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And the tunnel vision is a good way to put it, because it's like 9 times out of 10, you just put the game away and come back, and you're like, fuck, obviously this is what I was supposed to do.
Yes.
Slide, got it, okay.
But when it tells you you can't gain height underwater, and it wasn't just me, I've had seasoned Metroid fans say that they were stuck as well at this point, and just use it underwater. It does
Wouldn't
work.
hear
but you have
that weak buster shit from me, Steve. Let me tell you.
So,
Max, at the beginning of this game, I didn't even know you could jump on walls. So I came along.
Oh,
a long
man,
fucking
me
way,
too.
Dude.
All right. Yeah. And I was like, why the fuck doesn't this jump thing work? I can't get any height. And I'm like, I really have to stand perfectly still and jump straight up. So she grabs onto the ledge. I'm like, this is ridiculous. What design is this? I was like, is this making it so during an Emmy thing where it's chasing me, I have to stop dead, jump and grab a thing? And it's like, no, I posted my frustrations on Twitter about it, and Nasobi replied and was just like, you just jump on the walls. And I'm like, what the fuck? It not once told me I could jump on the wall. I
Dude,
went and did it, and since then, it's just bouncing around everywhere.
I ran into that same thing in Super Metroid, where the things I looked up most in Super Metroid were literally like, how do I do this move? And the wall jumping in that one is specifically very difficult.
Have you seen how it's taught to you in Super Metroid? So,
Yes.
yeah.
I got to that room and I was like, oh, I think I know there's something I have to learn here that will let me jump on the walls. And then
there's the
I still
animals
couldn't
that are
figure it
showing
out.
you.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go look up a guide and have somebody explain it to me with words.
I love seeing like people discover that for the first time. There was a guy who like you fall down and he's like, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? He's like, oh, hello, my friend. There was like the little monkey like jumping, and he makes the noise of like the item collection noise. He's like, ar, 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 ar. And then the monkey starts wall jumping, and he's like, do I wall jump? And then he does the wall jump. He's like, oh, the monkey taught me how to wall jump. And then there's another one where like the bird teaches you how to shine spark, and he's like, I've just learned a new move that I could already do, and the bird has taught me how to do it. How cool! That's very cool.
Yeah.
It is like fun to see how older games like that had to think how to teach you things, because there's like a finite amount of ways that they can actually communicate with you.
Mhm.
It
now
in
it
that
just
game,
like,
Put it in the
seriously.
book, mate. Put it in the booklet.
yeah, right.
now it just
that
is like,
game-
here, you've just got a new power up. Here's a big pop up. Read this whole wall of text, and
Here's
it'll
an
explain how
animation
to
that shows you how
do
it
it.
works. So Ben, my mate Ben, was playing Circle of the Moon for the first time, the Castlevania GBA collection, and he was like, "Why don't you tell me this is a roguelike? I keep dying, go back to the start." And I was like, "Ben, just save the game at a save room." He's like, "What are the save rooms and how do I save?" And he was like, "No one told me how to press up in this random room." And I was like, "Didn't you read the booklet, Ben? Why didn't you read the booklet that comes in the box?"
Oh, that's so frustrating.
That's funny. You didn't tell me it was a roguelike. Every game's a roguelike if you don't save,
You know what? I remember buying games as a kid, and the drive home, I would just be opening them up, looking through the whole manual, and
And
I'm
the
like, I'm so
booklet.
ready to play this. Smelling everything, yeah, for sure.
So, Chuy, I know this wasn't your first Metroid game, but do you feel like you want to go back and explore some of the older ones now?
I think I'd wanted to since playing Super Metroid. I don't know when I will is the only question, but I
Sure.
do think I want to. Yeah. And I'll also say, like, I was pretty surprised when Steve was like, I'm not into the story, because like Super Metroid I turned on and I was like, immediately I was like, I'm invested in this. I really care about what's happening
I
in
mean,
the story.
I don't know.
I'll throw Steve under
I
the
was on,
bus
like,
on this
downer.
one. Steve is very, very good at not reading text and then complaining that he doesn't understand the
No,
story.
I read no, honestly, I read the text and it was like, the problem is number 4 and it's telling me that X and she's had a vaccine and it's done this and it's done that, and I'm like, I don't care about any of this because I'm just coming in
Right.
to play the game.
No, but see, that's
and
the
I
problem.
Don't know
You don't
any of the
care.
stuff.
You don't pay
And I was
attention.
like, oh, okay, so how imaginative are these enemy names? They're just called the X. Like, this is so lame. This is like
They only
Destiny
got so many
level.
characters,
the light,
Steve.
The dark.
2002, man.
It's 2002. They didn't have names then,
They didn't have
Steve.
names for things, man.
I mean, it's just funny to me because that's exactly how this game starts. It's exactly the same, where it's like,
It's the same.
here's a bunch
start
of
to the
proper
game.
nouns. Do you know what these
Do you
things
know
are? It
another
doesn't
thing?
matter. You'll learn later.
Another thing I learned from this game: Samus is a bounty hunter, but
Yeah, she is.
Ray from the community told me it's not really what you think it means. And apparently, at Retro Studios, they confirmed, because they wanted to make Samus like go and hunt people in the Prime games, and Nintendo was just like, no, she doesn't hunt people. She's a hero. Why would she be going to hunt people for money? And they just thought that bounty hunter meant really cool space person, and so Samus is a bounty hunter, but she's not really. She's just a really cool space person. And I love that story. It's so funny.
They actually make a reference to it where they say that the price of going to ZDR, this is at the beginning of the game, isn't worth the bounty. So I think they just retconned it to mean, instead of it being you go and collect a person and bring them back, it's actually just go and do something someone else doesn't want, someone else can't do, and we'll give you money for it. That's what bounty has. Bounty
Yeah.
means anything that isn't
Yeah, it's anything now.
something we don't want to do.
She's like a soldier of fortune, but like
Yeah,
just doesn't hunt
exactly.
people. Like you
It
know.
would be better if they called it like a mercenary. Like that would be more
I think that's
fitting than
But
bounty
that's-
hunter.
That sounds more like a bad guy though. Like no, like what good guy is a mercenary, right? Like
Yeah, it's true.
I guess.
When you mentioned a minute ago about booklets, like getting game booklets and stuff, when I first got Metroid Fusion, my first Metroid game, I picked it up. I went to a game shop, and I was told I could pick anything I wanted. My brother picked Tiger Tasmanian Tiger on PS2, and I picked. I recognised that character from Smash Bros, so I picked up the game. And I remember being in the car, coming back, and flipping through the booklet, and in the art book, it's got all of the original art from the
Oh,
booklet.
that's really cool.
So I
So
remember
cool.
seeing like all of the things like, oh, you can do this to grab a wall, you can do this to you can like all the different things you can do. And it's got all of the art in here that was in the art book. Like, oh, yeah, here's some examples of bosses that you kill, and like there's Ceres, and there's that, and there's that. And when I was looking through this earlier, I was like, oh my god, this is all the art. This is exactly it.
How do you feel about the new suit designs? Because I know some people are a little bit down on them, or they think they're looking a bit goofy compared to some of the old classic suits.
It really grew on me. Like when I first saw it, I was like, white on blue. I was like, oh, I don't really get it. But the more I've looked at it, and then you see, the various suit, you see the gravity suit, and you sort of think about, okay, this is their power suit from Samus Returns. If that became a fusion suit and then was like starting to regrow, it would look like this. So the more it grew on me. But I think the gravity suit looks incredible in this.
So is the suit part of Samus? She's not like inside the suit?
Yeah, it's a mixture of both. It's like not only it's part of her, but also it's a physical object. But in other realms, she can like phase it on and off whenever she wants, and they use it in really ridiculous story ways. But in Prime, it's like a physical suit that she takes on and off. I don't know. It sort of changes a lot. But yeah, it's basically like, because it's a Chozo suit, she had to have Chozo DNA in order to wear it and use it. So it's sort of like attached to her in a way, which is why fusion happens.
I have a question about the Chozo.
Yeah.
Are they gone? Like, do they not exist anymore? Is the fact that she found a Chozo on this planet like a big reveal because they're like extinct or whatever?
Yeah. They've been extinct for a long time.
But was she raised by them?
Yeah, she was raised by them as a kid, but like
Okay.
the last of them, supposedly. And in all through the Prime games, you're like in ancient Chozo civilizations. All the Chozo have gone by this point. In Prime, most of the Chozo worked out that they could enlighten themselves into like a different plane of existence, and they all became like thought and energy, and they just left all their bodies behind.
Okay.
And they were like these benevolent, these like thinking people, which is why in this game they're being a Chozo that's just like an absolute wreckhead and loves not wreckhead. He's not a.
Max, have you ever seen the TV series Stargate?
My mate actually messaged me and was like, looks like the person making that Metroid game has seen Stargate.
Honestly, the whole fucking thing, the save rings, the Egyptian stuff, some of the enemies legit just look like they're straight out of Stargate. You go to the underwater area, there is a Stargate in the background.
Oh, really?
And I was like, you can see it. There's like an area, it's got like a big like tanker dude at the bottom, and there's just like a ring, and it's filled with water.
It's interesting because all of the old Metroid games are inspired by Alien films. So if you look at like one of the Metroid games, like I think Metroid 2 is whatever the Alien film is, where she goes and fights all the alien, goes to the Xenomorph like homeworld, and she kills the Queen. That's Metroid 2. When she becomes part Xenomorph in Alien 4, is it?
Yeah, that's Resurrection, right?
Yeah. That's Metroid Fusion. So like they are very much Ridley, the dragon, the boss is named after Ridley Scott. So the old Metroid games are actually based on, or are heavily inspired by the Alien movies. So it could just be that this one, with this specific one, they've decided, okay, let's go Stargate instead.
Honestly,
they've obviously seen a connection.
The entire time I was like, why is all this like Egyptian stuff, but it's like aliens? Because that was the whole thing with Stargate. It was like the pyramids are where they landed their spaceships, and that was like the landing zone for them, and this and the other. That's why everything was Egyptian themed, and the Gua Ward were like all named after like Egyptians, like the Ra and all of that stuff. So I got
It could be
so many
inspired by it,
Stargate
because-
vibes. I loved it. I think maybe that's why it clicked, because Stargate is my favorite sci-fi series
Oh,
of
is
all
it?
time.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Because Zero Mission, I remember Zero Mission when they really started leaning really heavily on the Egyptian stuff. Because in Prime, they do have a lot of that, this stuff, but a lot of it's more, they're just these massive statues, they're these birds. But in they start doing the hieroglyphic stuff and the headdresses and stuff in Zero Mission, which was 2005, and Stargate's a long time before that. So it could be that they were just like, I like this, let's do this.
Well, you know what they say about the best art is steel, right? So, this next question is an interesting one. This one comes from Trendy Brendy, another one of our Patreon supporters, who wrote in and said, with how useful Switch custom controller profiles are, do you think criticism for uncustomizable controls towards games that release on Switch hold merit? I've seen this in a couple Metroid Dread reviews, and I can't help but wonder if the reviewer was unaware of the feature, or if they're future-proofing their review for when it ends up ported to a potentially less accessible Nintendo console in the future. I'm an able-bodied gamer, so take my take with a pinch of salt, but I don't think the game is presently less accessible because you need to press the home button and navigate to the Switch's settings to change your control scheme. Obviously, this doesn't account for features that don't exist, like twin-stick shooting or other accessibility options. Shout out to Sony's accessibility features, but just something I felt wasn't exactly warranted critique. Interested to hear your thoughts, Trendy Brendy. So, I'll start. I have a couple thoughts on this. The Switch custom control profiles, I think that's fine. It's like it's not an answer or a solution, but I don't think that's a feature that is like talked about or directed to at all, right? In like any Nintendo game. So if you're a non-able-bodied gamer and you're not like a fucking dork like us, and when I say us, like us on this show, or those of you who listen, we eat, sleep, and breathe video games, and we're aware of these options, that's really not, I don't think that's an answer, right? You see more and more with, I wouldn't say just AAA games, but probably mostly AAA games, considering they generally have a bigger budget. That accessibility features are front and center. You'll start the game, and it'll be like, hey, do you need any of these, right? That in my opinion, that should be the default. Because if you're an able-bodied gamer and you don't need any of those things, it's as easy as pressing B and being like, no, I'm good. Default controls are fine. And that's 1 second for you. Whereas if you are a non-able-bodied gamer, and you do have to go navigate to a special menu and make all those things, you might not be able to do that. Like, you might have a physical limitation that makes that impossible or difficult, right? And I don't want a non-able-bodied gamer to have to jump into Metroid Dread and then look that information up and then take 20, 30 minutes, maybe more, depending on what your physical limitations are, to set up a custom profile before you can start playing the game, right?
Not to mention, like, at the beginning of the game, you don't know any of this stuff that you're gonna unlock, right? You don't get it all until like you're 6 hours into the game.
You can set up a custom profile, and then all of a sudden it's like hold down 3 buttons at once to fire your grapple beam, and you're like, oh, okay, which 3 buttons can I press at once that don't also interfere with the other buttons that I can press?
Exactly. It's not really a solution. There are a lot, like, I think that's the thing with accessibility, is that everybody's limitations are different. It's not as simple as having a catch-all, like, let me set up a custom profile and then every game I jump into just works for me, right? It's not that simple. And Brendy, I don't think you're saying it is, right? You said take it with a grain of salt. What do you think? That's what I think. I think the onus should be on us, the able-bodied gamer, to be like, I'm good. I don't need any of this. Let me move on. For us, it'll take seconds.
Stuff that's like common in other games now, like press once to like toggle instead of having to hold. Imagine if you could just press the left button and it goes into aim mode, and then you press it again to get back out, because you might not necessarily be able to hold down a button for a long period of time. Things like that should be options in here. But I got what I expected. It's a Nintendo game. They don't add any accessibility features in. I even think that there should be an easy mode to make this more accessible. I don't see why there couldn't be. I genuinely think that, as much as I had a great time defeating these hard bosses, I would love to see anyone that wants to play this game, play it. I think we talk about it a lot. Celeste did this so well. It's like we designed this game with the intention of this being hard. But if you need to turn on any number of these like things to make it easier for you, then go ahead and do it, because we want you to be able to experience the game. I'm also curious to hear from someone who suffers with color blindness, because that was another thing that I kind of thought maybe would be an issue throughout the game, like those doors with the different like colored domes over them.
Or like,
I'm sure that you can pause the game and hover over it and it tells you what the item is.
Yeah.
It says wave beam, but that's not a solution. Okay, I've hit this door. Let me pause the game, zoom in, hover over it. That's not.
Yeah, like it's adding a layer of barrier to those players, right? Like when it's like, oh, the charge beam doors are slightly more orange than the regular beam doors, right? It's like, okay, like if I'm colorblind and I can't see yellow, like that means nothing, right? Like it could easily become something that is a barrier for you in terms of just having a normal like flow through the game, you know?
Yeah. Do they have? I don't think they have separate symbols to them. I think they have separate symbols to them, right? So that's
the like
of
charge beam and the normal beam doors don't. The charge beam ones are just slightly darker yellow.
Oh yeah, okay.
Some
Those
of
are just like
them-
circles, right?
Yeah, some of
Yeah.
them, as you progress throughout the game, there's like domes that go over the door, and some of them have like slightly different patterns. So there's one you'll have to hit with a missile that's like red with like a pattern over the top.
So if you see here, you probably can't really see on my screen, but either way, okay, so it is the same symbol, and the charge one is just thicker, like it's bold, basically.
Okay.
It's not, if you have a visual impairment, like, I don't know, like...
It's quite a fast-paced game as well, so you're going to hit a door, shoot it, and go, well, hang on, this isn't working. It might take you a little while to go, okay, maybe I need to press pause and see what the issue is. Because you're not going to want to go into the menu. You're going to want to, like, okay, let me try everything in my arsenal to open this door. Nothing's going to work, right? Because you don't know that it doesn't work yet.
Yeah. And as far as like reviews go and like pointing that stuff out, honestly, I lean on the side that I'm like for it, because if Nintendo starts getting hit with these things, I think it's the only way they're really going to start taking it seriously in any way. Like right now, they don't do anything toward accessibility. And I mean, that's just a big bummer. There's so many companies out there that are so focused on that and making games be playable for as many people as possible. And Nintendo, I mean, I feel like just fundamentally should be doing the same thing. Like, don't you want your games to be playable by as many people as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other two console manufacturers do a much better job, right? Like Xbox, I think does a really good job on the hardware side of things, right? Like they created the accessibility controller, and that was a huge win for the accessibility community. And you know, in the question from Brendy, you know, he called out Sony's efforts and like, you know, looking at like what Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us Part 2, which is like probably the best set of accessibility features in any video game ever made, you know, to look at what Nintendo does, which is like literally nothing 9.5 times out of 10. It's embarrassing. And I think it broadcasts a message that they say, we do not care about disabled people. Like, we do not care about making our games more accessible for people who have disabilities, period.
I can't think of any Nintendo game that has that as well. Like,
no. And I say 9.5 because maybe there's one that I'm not thinking of, but I really don't think there is.
There's basically colorblind mode in Splatoon.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only one I can actually think
So
of.
there's one. That's good. But
yeah.
You know, that's
also one mode in a game where you pretty much have to use the motion controls as well. You know.
Yes, please use motion controls in Splatoon.
Chuy just perked up.
I'm honestly surprised at this point that they haven't been hit with some kind of lawsuit. Like it's got to be against some kind of like Disabilities Act or something to not have these accessible to people.
It's not.
If it isn't, I think it's going to get to the point where it needs to be legislated, because like why isn't it accessible to everyone?
I mean, I think the answer with that is the only legal argument you can make for requiring accessibility is for things that are like you know,
like a bank or something.
yeah, like you need to have a ramp, right? You need to have a wheelchair ramp or something like that, or like you need to have like certain websites need to have like the ability for someone who's vision impaired to like have the text read, right? Like there's certain things like that you need to do depending on what service you provide. But like video games are not an essential service. Nobody needs to play video games, right? So like you can make a legal defense for yourself that whatever, like we don't have to do that. But I think to the point that I think it was Steve who made, or no, it was Chuy who made that, like it's the public pressure that's really going to do something. It's going to be people being like, well, we won't buy this game then, or that every review is like, wow, look how behind the time Nintendo is on this. They don't care about making their games accessible. That's what's going to make them actually do something is bad press.
But even then, for everyone that says that, there's going to be 10 people that are going to say games aren't for everyone. You know, it's that same with the difficulty, the difficulty crowd. It's like, why should you make a game easier? You know, play a different game. You don't have to play this game if it's too hard for you. But you know,
Yeah, we saw that same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing happened again with this game, right? With Metroid, it was the same thing that happened with Demon Souls and Dark Souls and all of those kind of games. It's
Sekiro.
Yeah, it's like if you think this game's too hard, just don't play it. And I genuinely do not understand that mentality. Like, why are you so against having an option to like make it easier?
I'll explain it, Steve. It's gatekeeping. That's why. It's because I can feel superior to someone if I'm good at a game and they're not. And I'm going to say this to you right here and now. If that's how you feel, that's a really profoundly selfish way to look at the world. That's it. You know, it's not about you. Right? Like video games are art. They're meant to be enjoyed and shared. And anything that you can do to make that an option for more people is a good thing in my book. Right? Like that's what you should be doing. And I want to make it clear again, we're responding to Brendy's question. I don't believe that that's what Brendy is saying at all. You know, I think it's a reasonable question. And I think the fact that you know, it is such a dynamic issue is why Nintendo needs to be more proactive about it. There needs to be solutions. They probably need to, you know, and not even probably, I'll say it. They need to bring in actual disabled gamers to consult on the game and be like, what are the things you need? Like, what are the things that large percentages of players need to make games more accessible? And then how can we make it so we implement those things moving forward? It's as simple as that. Sony's doing it, and they're starting to do it across all their titles. So get with the program on that one. So let's ask our last question here about Metroid Dread. This was, I'll take the pin out now, Sobi. All right. This is number 1 on your list, but it also came in from Justin Stanley. Asobi wrote in and said, did you feel the game is worth the price? Why yes or why no? Justin Stanley wrote in on Twitter and said, is the game worth the $80 Canadian that they ask for it here?
Unfair for me to comment on this as I found been waiting for it for so long. However, I do think that in terms of like paying £60 for a 2D game, I think that there is a level of production here. You know, there is still, you know, like we said before about the presentation and the visuals and the effort they put into it. I do think £60 for any game is quite expensive, and I know there's a whole debate there about how much games should cost. And I think £70 for like PS5 games, I think is a, you know, extortionate. But
this one's 50 here, right? It's one of the cheaper ones. It's not the same tier as.
If you got it from Curry's, I'm upset.
That's where I got it from.
80 quid for a steelbook and an art book. But
yeah,
I personally think that because I know I'm going to play this game, you know, I'm not going to play this game once in the 10 hours it took me to 100% it, and then that's me done. I'm going to play this to speedrun it, to try and sequence break it, to try and get all the endings. I'm going to keep playing this game over and over again, because that's part of the fun, is learning it and becoming better at it. But people would look at it as it's a 2D 7-hour game and it's not worth the money. However, I do think there's more to it than that, personally.
It's way more than 7 hours. Like, you go back through, if you want to like 100% this game, and if you're not very good at these kind of games like me, you'll spend a very long time in it. That said, I spent £27 on this game. Like, I did get it for the pricing error that Max spoke about. I think I would have probably spent £40 to £50 for this. It's retailing in a box for like 40 quid at Argos in the UK now. About £40 to £50, I think, is probably where my limit is, which I think is $80 Canadian after exchange rate. It's about £50 when I checked. I I would have had reservations going in, having never played a Metroid game, and I think it's a very big ask to say, present, this is a 2D game, and then you find out it's 7 hours, and then they want $60. So I can understand why people have reservations about it, but I will say this is one of only 3 games this year that really grabbed me, and I didn't stop thinking about and did not stop playing. I played this solidly over 3 days, and it's firmly on my Game of the Year list.
Steve
I
doesn't
think
play
it may
games like
even
that.
be.
Like, you never play games that way.
No, I never ever play games like that. I think it's firmly on my Game of the Year list. It may even be my Game of the Year. And I genuinely think it is worth the price. You should play this game.
Would you pay £80 for a collector's edition, Steve?
Yeah, probably would.
In retrospect,
yeah,
yes.
I've got a spare if you want to buy it off me.
What a shill.
And you guys get way better collector's versions than us. I think you got both the steel box and the regular box,
know, it's
right?
bullshit.
Yeah, you didn't get the cool one in the. You sell it to an American on our Discord.
What did you
Someone will
get?
get it off you.
Well, I got it digitally personally,
okay.
but I know here I think it just came with the steel box.
Oh,
It didn't
okay.
come with like the regular one as well. But that said, I have a good answer for this one because I did go back and forth on it a little bit. I think initially I pre-ordered, and then it was before Nintendo. Nowadays, Nintendo does their pre-orders. They don't charge you until a week before the game comes out. So then you're charged, and then you like have it. There's no turning back, right? So I pre-ordered it, and then I was like, oh, you know what? I'll think about it a little bit more. So I canceled it for a little while. And then as it got closer to release, I was like, I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a really fun game. And so I decided, you know what? Let's pre-order it. And that was probably like half a week before. I think it was probably the Monday before release that I was like, all right, I'll get it. So that at that point, it's like, okay, my money's there. Like, it's gone. And I'll say, like, since starting to play it, I have not for a second doubted that it was worth the $60 that I paid. I've just been having fun with it. I think even if I played through and beat it once and then, just like never turned it on again, maybe years down the line I play it again, I think just the experience I've gotten so far from it, I'm just like, yes, this is worth it, 100%.
So I in general really do not appreciate the conversation around how much games should cost being tied to their length. The idea that this game is 7 hours and that means it can't be worth $60, I think is a really, really damaging mentality for the health of video games as an artistic medium. I think no one can tell you whether a game is worth what it costs but you, because what I think might be worth $60, you might disagree with. I had a very similar conversation around this with like Life is Strange True Colors earlier this year, where there's a lot of debate over whether or not that game should have been $60. And I think for me, I am willing to spend money for a game that I want to see more of, right? I like the idea of Nintendo putting a 2D, AAA experience out at that price point and having it have a massive marketing machine behind it and having it be the game that they're pushing on the OLED Switch, which is the new, their new hardware SKU. I think that's a win for that genre and that kind of game. And the idea that a 2D game can't be worth $60 is bullshit, frankly. And, I haven't played enough of the game to say if I feel like it was worth that investment. But I think that's the thing, right? You need to make that decision for yourself. For someone like Max, who loves this genre, who loves this franchise, who has been waiting for this and wants to see more of it, I would hope that you would go out and show your support for that, right? Because that's how you're going to get more of it. And, I think that, we can debate all day about how much games cost. I know that I come from a privileged position of having expendable income and being able to justify buying games when I want to buy games, right? I know that that's not the truth for everybody, and you might need to be more choosy about what games you buy and how you buy them and whether you wait for sales. And there's nothing wrong with that either, right? You don't need to buy a game when it first comes out. You don't need to buy a game at full price. You have a lot of options to shop around and, maybe not as easy with a Nintendo title, right? But,
Yeah.
you know,
This one's not going down for years.
probably not, right? But I think at the end of the day, right, like, we as consumers need to put our money where our mouth is. If you believe in a product, if you want to see more of that product, then go out and spend your money on it. And if you don't. And it's that simple. You don't need to turn it into a moralistic argument about how much video games should or shouldn't cost, right? Because the reality is games cost more and more to develop and market over time. And they have, and we haven't seen a price increase in multiple generations in most markets, at least in the States. The cost of video games has been the same since I was a teenager or younger even. And that's not sustainable either. So, you know, it's okay to be a savvy consumer and you know, decide you don't want to spend $60 on a game. But, you know, I don't think it's right for people to look at a genre or a style of game and be like, this can't be worth X amount of money, right? I'd rather have a memorable short experience than a bloated long one.
Interesting that the conversation is always, oh, is a 10-hour game worth £60? Not Breath of the Wild's 100 hours. This should be worth £100. You know, it's
Exactly.
never the other way.
Or The Witcher, right? I don't even like The Witcher, but The Witcher 3 has over 200 hours of gameplay and 2 huge like game length expansions that were released for free, right?
And it's a tenner regularly.
Like, that game should not have cost $60 when it came out. It shouldn't. And that's an unpopular opinion.
Maybe it launched because, like, I know it had a lot of problems. It was like
sure
teetering on like Cyberpunk level at launch. I mean, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation. I will say though, I don't know what Justin's like point with the question was. Like, maybe he's just asking like, is it a good game? And we've taken it down the rabbit hole of, is it a 2D game? Is it because of the time? Like, is this why you're asking? But like I said, I think this 100% was worth it. But I did also kind of pose the question because there was a Kotaku article that we're going to talk about on Flip Screen Games podcast next week, flown around about piracy. But my thought, it kind of reminded me of going to video game rental stores when I was a kid, and that was like how we found new video games and things. And how they've just like gone by the wayside now, and how cool it would be if that still existed, because you don't then have to drop $60 on a game there and then. You can make that decision after you've rented the game for a weekend or for a day or whatever you want to do. And if you finish it in that time, then fine. But someone replied, I can't remember who it was, and said what they do is if they're not sure about a game is they'll buy it and they'll play it for a little bit. And if they don't like it, they go trade it in. And then they kind of feel like, yeah, maybe I've lost £5 to £10 on it, but at least then it's sort of like they see it as like a modern day rental. You can kind of recuperate your costs back.
It is a shame that as soon as you buy a game and open it, that is now no longer, even if you don't put it in, as soon as you open that case, it is not worth the same amount.
You've broken the seal.
Yeah, there's something about that seal that suddenly makes it's suddenly worth £20, and it's ridiculous. You can get a game, play it, and be like, well, great, now I have this game that I don't like. And I think that's a lot of the time why reviews are so important in games, more so than anywhere else. If a film's shit and you go and pay a tenner to go and see a film, you go, well, that was a bit shit. If a game's shit and you pay £60 for it, you then got to suck up that cost, because it's probably not worth trading in what you're going to get for it. You can't return it.
Yeah. Well, and for some gamers, right? Like, if you, like you said, right? If you have a limited budget and you buy a game that you didn't like, you're like, ah, shit. Like, I gotta wait until I can afford another one.
Yeah.
You know. And that's, you know, not to say that I don't have empathy for that, right? Like, that's a shit position. But I think that, to your point, Max, right? Like, that's why we have reviews. That's why we have an entire industry built around people playing and talking about games, right? And ideally, you find folks whose tastes line up with yours, and you know, you try to trust their opinion, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best thing you can do. All right, so...
Or just try it on Game Pass.
Exactly.
Yeah, just try Metroid on Game Pass.
Can I make one last point about Metroid before we move on to the
Yeah,
OLED?
absolutely.
So there's something, I don't know if you thought the same, Steve, but maybe not because you haven't played Metroid Prime, but as I was playing the game, and I spoke to Ewan from Gaming Web when he said, I literally cut what you just said out of my review for word count reasons. When I'm running around and there's these detailed environments and there's these, like, you know, there's like a hologram of a ship in the background, or there's like a giant creature in the background, or there's a statue, I wish that I could Metroid Prime style just scan it, get a bit of lore that I can read, and then I can just at my leisure
cool.
just go through and read. Here's a bit of history, because the world is dense with stuff, and there's obviously a lot of lore going on with, you know, we're in the last sort of basically the last Chozo civilization right now, and there's all this stuff, and there's all this there's always different areas where there's clearly been experimentation happening, or there's clearly been like destruction happening, or all these different things.
Yeah.
And I just want to know more. And having reached the end of the game and knowing that that's not coming, if I was to sort of say something that would pad this game out and make it more for me, and would probably, I'm giving it a 9 in my head. If I was going to pop it up to that 10, it would be give me the Metroid Prime style scanning that lets me just learn everything I want to learn about the game.
I mean, that would be cool. Or because you don't really, or even like if you found some like, I don't know, some text around the place, like a book or a, a stone tablet or something. I don't know. Like I made the point on Twitter, and it was before I knew about the lore of the game, which was it's mighty convenient that someone's left all these suits lying around that just happen to perfectly fit Samus, and I know that that's not the case.
This random picks up a new suit every time. Is that how you?
Real convenient that this Mario guy gets huge when he eats these mushrooms, huh? Real convenient.
Right, but though she's like allegedly, I guess she's like in a similar universe to ours, and like she goes to this planet that she's never been to before, where there's no civilization, and there's this one X that we're trying to find, and this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden you're going around the place, and all of these power-ups happen to work with your suit, and then you find a couple of other suits, and they just fit perfectly. And like no one questions that whatsoever. That's absolutely totally fine.
Play Zero Mission. That will actually it will answer that question for you. If you play Zero Mission, there's bits in that game where you pick up an item and it's like, this doesn't work with your suit, but okay, I'll just hold on to it anyway. And that
that's interesting. Yeah, I might have to play that one then.
You gotta actually learn the story before you criticize it, Steve.
Yeah, you should.
There's no explanation as to why the suit fits. The only explanation I got from people was it's because she's part Chozo or something. I don't fucking
and
know.
what?
Like,
What you think it's that? Have you? Oh, right. I forgot. Never mind. I was about to say, have you not seen Iron Man? But you haven't. So think about it like the Iron Man suit, right? Like it'll fit to her body because it's high tech. It's not it's not like a tailored suit, you know.
Fine. I thought it was like I thought it was like I'm going to the shop. I need to get the suit fit because I can't imagine every
I'm really glad this comes
in Halo.
So
all of the. Can you imagine like all the Spartan suits in Halo? They all fit everyone else, Maybe they are. Maybe they're all clones.
The robot suits. They probably do. It's a robot. Just adjust.
Maybe they're like clones, like what are they called? Stormtroopers.
Yeah,
they're all the same height.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's like, and you're a little short to be a stormtrooper. Maybe Samus is just a little bit too tall because there's a point where you could see her neck, and I was like, that suit's not giving much protection. And like one of the cutscenes, you could see her neck. I was like, I want to pull that helmet down a little bit. Samus,
roll
to get hit.
She needs some Under Armour.
Classic American Horror Story death. Just one swipe and suddenly the neck's just pissing blood.
Yeah.
That's how it works. It's real life. Okay.
So I had one more question for you, Max, so that I can make this our thumbnail for this week. Do you think this is the best Metroid game right now? And I know that you probably have to play it a million more times. Just gut reaction, hot off the. Do you feel this could be the best Metroid game?
I think it's the best 2D Metroid game, yes, because when I think about Super Metroid, which was my personal favourite, it is very stilted and tank-like, and the control scheme isn't as good. This just does all the things that Super Metroid doesn't do as well. This does much better, and also it has the visual Super Metroid does. And yeah, I think this is probably the best 2D Metroid. But I think that's one, possibly recency bias, and two, just because it's a modern game. I'm sure if they remade Super Metroid to be this modern and it was exactly the same world, same power-ups, I might be like, well, that's it. That's one.
All right, you know what? I lied. I have one more question. Do you think that this game will be a kind of like a coming out party for Metroid in the way that like we've seen some other games get those editions on Switch, right? Like you look at Zelda, and Zelda had obviously still had its fans and its legacy, but before Breath of the Wild, it had been a long time since a Zelda game was essential. It was like a Game of the Year contender. It was, one of the best games of all time, right? Do you think Metroid Dread has hit that bar?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping this is, like I said earlier, the Fire Emblem Awakening moment,
yes.
where the game sells well, the game receives well, everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I do like Metroid." And people like Steve who poo-pooed the series before in a naive way. Naive Steve.
I apologize. I'm very sorry.
I forgive you. And
I'm
now,
sorry,
look, now
Samus.
he's enjoying it. It's his favorite game of the year, and I think that this is going to do that for people. And I think giving the game the push that it has done, not sending it out to die without a marketing campaign or whatever, putting it at the forefront of their E3 as well, for example. I
Or
think this
popping
could
it on a
be-
dying console like Samus Returns,
Exactly. So this, I think this is exactly what Metroid needed, and it's going to put so many eyes on Prime 4. And I reckon when Prime 4 does come out, and it's got all of the bits that this game doesn't have, like the scanning and the fact that it's in first person, it's going to be even more attractive to people. The people that look at the
Yeah.
Dread and say, "Oh, a 2D game," they're going to go, "Oh, this is a first person game for 60. I can get behind that." All of a sudden, you've got.
Can you
everyone's
imagine
happy.
though, like what the arguments and the discussions are going to be then? Like, are
I-
these
I-
two worth the same price?
I
One's a
live with this
full
guy.
3D
Don't worry,
first-person
Metroid
shooter, and one's
Metroid
a
Prime will
2D
be
side scroller.
I bet you Metroid Prime 4 is the first game that Nintendo's like, oh, this is $70 now because this is what
Yeah,
video
here we
games
go.
cost.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Because it's taken us 4 years. Oh, but hang on, 5 years. No, it'll be 7 years by then probably to make. Jesus Christ.
I don't think they're going to do it. I genuinely think it's just Sony going for it. There's only Sony first-party titles they're going for it. I really don't think
Xbox
that anyone
Yeah,
else
and
is
you know
going
what,
to
Steve?
compete.
Why don't you go look at the last historical example of the time that the price got raised? Nintendo was very cool, like, oh, our games are $40. We're staying at $40, and then they're like, no, just kidding, another $50. Oh, just kidding, another $60.
Yeah.
It happens this way every
we'll
time.
see.
One person is the first one who does it, and everyone's like, unbelievable, and then everybody else catches up. I will be genuinely
Apple.
surprised if Nintendo
It's
doesn't.
like Apple with the notch. Apple brings out £1,000 phone with a notch. Next year, all the Android phones have got notches. All the Samsungs are £1,000. That's just how it works. Someone's got to be like brave enough to do it.
Yeah, to see how much more
set
blood they
the
can
standard.
squeeze out of the stone, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, Nintendo loves to nickel and dime us as much as they can. I will be eminently shocked if their games don't increase in price soon.
Yeah.
Has
I mean,
that
I guess
happened?
I come from a different perspective because, like I say, Nintendo's pricing in the UK is so whack. It's like Metroid Dread's £50, Zelda Breath of the Wild is £60, and then such and such is Link's Awakening is 50, Luigi's Mansion's like 40. It's like all over the place. So I really can't figure out their pricing structure whatsoever.
I do wonder though. I don't remember if that price increase happened like mid-generation though, or like mid-console. I feel like they wait till the next console to raise prices.
I believe it was because I think GameCube games were $40 and then they increased in price. I could be wrong about that. Or
Do you think
or maybe it was at the beginning of the
partially
Wii.
because that?
I'm sorry?
Do you think if it was mid like GameCube, do you think part of that was because the GameCube was a failure as a console, especially when you compare it to the PS2 in terms of sales, and they just needed to make some money?
Maybe, but I think it comes down to I believe that publishers charge what they think they can get away with. That's what I think.
Agree.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's shocking when like Crash Bandicoot Trilogy or Alan Wake Remaster come out and they're like 20, 30 quid.
Right.
And it's like they can do it. If obviously these are remasters, these aren't going to have the same value. But it's like these publishers can do it. They just choose not to because if they set a precedent, they're going to have to stick to it. And they set the precedent
Yes.
that being these games are this price.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
Take-Two seemingly setting that precedent. I saw that article you retweeted, Max, that the
Oh,
GTA trilogy may be $70
That's
Oh,
on
no.
PS5.
And we're not even sure that they're anything more than just like a little bit touched up.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
We shall see. So I know I promised we were going to talk about our OLED Switch impressions, but this is already a long episode, so we're going to really, really briefly talk about this, and then maybe like next week when we've had more time with them, we can talk about them more. Chewy, remind me, did you get one?
No,
Okay.
I did not.
We might have to bring Max back on and talk about it with me then. But anyway, we did get a piece of reader mail. This one comes from Zaid, another one of our Patreon producers, and said, I picked up the Switch OLED, and I believe it's 100% worth the upgrade if you are like me and wanted to make a genuine attempt at playing more in handheld, or if you play handheld exclusively. My jaw genuinely dropped when I saw that OLED for the first time. Yeah, so I have had very little time with my OLED Switch. Like I said, it showed up on Friday. I was in New York. I've played a few, hours of it today. I'm really impressed. My initial thoughts on the build quality. It's got a little more heft to it. I remember Richard said that the weight was very similar and like you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I don't quite agree with that. I think it definitely feels a little bit heavier, but it's not to the point where it's uncomfortable to hold. The back has a really nice like metallic texture to it, which I like because my hands sweat a lot when I play, and the metal's like a little bit cooler. So I'm digging that. Love the look of the white Joy-Cons. The kickstand is great. I think the speakers are a lot better. And even like where you put the games in is so much more convenient and easier to access and do like in the dark or something like that, So and obviously the screen looks incredible. Like I said, the booting up the Metroid Dread screen and like seeing those true blacks, I was definitely impressed. So I'll have more thoughts on this one next week, but I think it was well worth the money, and I'm really excited to spend more time with it. My biggest criticism was what a bitch it was to transfer my data. The actual
Don't forget your Animal Crossing island, because it's a separate download tool. It's not the same thing, right? It's like a separate island transfer system. Is that right?
I think they fixed that. Or is it still that way?
I think you have to download like an app that's like the transfer tool or something.
Yeah, it's a whole separate thing. It's crazy.
I might have deleted my island then, so that's fun.
Oh, no.
We just lost Max, so Godspeed, Max. Thank you for joining us. You can follow him at MaxLWright on Twitter. We'll have it down below. He's also over at the Cross Players. Check it out. I have no idea what just happened to him, so we won't get his impressions here. But they don't tell you that you need to do that. You switch everything over to your Switch, and then I plugged in my memory card, and it's like, oh, you use this on a different Switch. We need to wipe it. And I was like, what? So I put it back in my other Switch and was like, can I transfer my, like, do I have to do anything? And there was no way for me to do it because the account that all my saves and stuff are tied to is now on another Switch. So I might have deleted my Animal Crossing island and my Pokemon save, but we'll see, I guess. I don't know.
I kind of wonder if they'll be able to recover it, because they do have like backups that are made if you have the Switch Online,
Right. My friend Mike didn't do any special transfers, and when they opened up Pokemon Sword, they said that their save was still there, so I'm sure it's fine.
Okay.
But whatever. If not, I guess I'll finally have to restart my Animal Crossing island if I ever want to play again.
I hear there's a big update coming out like next month or something. So
I've heard.
Yeah, you might be able to have some fun with that.
Maybe next week we'll have to talk all about some of our predictions for that or something. I don't know. Maybe we we have the resident Animal Crossing expert tell us what's what. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us here in another episode of Nintendo Noise. This is a blast. Thanks again to Max for coming and hanging out with us. Go give him a follow. He's a great guy, and we love him. Thank you for bringing your.
And while he's not here, I guess we should plug the fact that he's part of the Cross Players.
I did say that.
Check them out.
But yeah, go follow the Cross Players.
I'll pop a link in the show notes and in the description so you can find everyone.
Yeah, go check them out. Give them a subscribe. They're friends of the show. Very nice guys. So go give them a listen. And thank you, Max, for sharing your Metroid expertise with us here this week. This was great. If you want to write in with your thoughts on any of the stuff that we discussed today or respond to any of our points, remember you can write in all those myriad of ways that I said earlier. Follow us on Twitter. Head to the Discord where we have a thread every week. Write to us at questions@flipscreen.games. And then, check out all our other content. We've got our sister show, Flip Screen Games, where we'll be talking about piracy, I would imagine, a bit this week, as well as a few other things. And, of course, we have our weekly Twitch streams. We've got the Patreon exclusive stuff. So lots of ways that you can get involved and get more content and, help build this community that we're doing here at Flip Screen Games. So, again, we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Nintendo Noise. Take care, everybody.